Welcome back to Grok Talk. Max Abramson's here. Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy. Thanks to Pete and Jimmy. Of course, Carly Fiorina and Jorge Mesa Tejada, who was on earlier. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook or Twitter. Look for Granite Grok. Like us, share us, and invite people to come and see what we see what we write. Sometimes we talk about what we read. That wasn't a total screw-up of a statement. And listen to the program, please, because I think we provide value to the discussion, and we want to continue to do that now. Max was bringing up an interesting point in the break, and I'd like you to revisit it, sir.
We voted on the budget a couple of weeks ago, and normally the Republican Party's been divided. The Democrat-appointed Speaker has been dividing the Republican Party, of course, and I think that has kind of started to fizzle out. There was a complete fiasco over the budget. Jasper's budget would have had an 8-cent per gallon gas tax increase, which would have hurt businesses, hurt our economy, and kept people from buying gas here. And I think that the split happened, and I think enough Republicans have finally broken away from Jasper, and I think maybe even Jasper and his people have kind of given up the ghost on trying to push the Democrat agenda, because I think that pattern's been seen. And what happened during the budget session was the regular platform Republicans, the O'Brien, Carol Maguire, Leon Rideout, Pam Tucker Republicans, put together a budget that could pass, because Jasper found, and Jasper and Flanagan, Flanagan's the majority leader in the House, although not the elected majority leader, they found they only had about 50 votes on the floor out of 400 reps, and so there was no chance of that. There was no chance of that budget passing through the House. So the platform Republicans had to get together, and unfortunately on the floor of the House we had to put a budget together out there in broad daylight. Normally it's all done in caucus. Some people don't like it being done in caucus, but when you're making sausage, you kind of have to just roll up your sleeves and go do it. So the Republican Party has come together in the House. Finally, this Wednesday was the first day ever. It was a short session, 90 minutes, and in pushing the red button and the green button, Democrats have finally gotten frustrated. They are seeing the Republican Party in the House vote Republican. Now, there are narrow majorities on some of these bills. One was 168 to 164.
So every person's vote counts.
Yes. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 votes on the floor. No, we've had more than that. We've had almost half a dozen votes on the floor that came down to about 4 votes or less. So every single state rep race matters. Even the vote initially, the vote between Jasper and O'Brien, if O'Brien had gotten 3 more state representatives there voting for O'Brien, O'Brien would be Speaker, and we would have a real Republican working majority. But now I think people have seen that Jasper and Flanagan really are just pushing the Democrat agenda.
Go on, after you.
Quick question. With all the votes going on, and you just piqued my interest here, the red button, green button, how many of the actual votes on legislation are being recorded versus those that are just voice votes?
Only a handful now are roll called. We usually have 3 or 4, sometimes 5 roll call votes a day. The Democrats behind me and surrounding me are constantly complaining about these roll call votes, and they're speaking out of order. You're not supposed to gripe and complain and speak while we're in the voting mode, and they're doing it during the debate also. They're complaining about all these roll call votes. They keep calling for roll call votes. The platform Republicans are voting for these roll call votes over and over again, and they complain and complain and complain. But we have to do it. If it's a Republican platform issue or something on the gold standard, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance group, you're going to have someone calling for a roll call every time, and they know that they're going to have it, and they gripe anyway.
And what are they griping about? What specifically are they saying about having to push the button?
They complain that, it costs money, and, it takes time, and we have to wait a minute for members to come back into the floor of reps and take their seats. They complain every single time. It's amazing. It's the same Democrats doing it every time.
Yeah, they just don't want to be held accountable, though. None of that
right.
other stuff
They don't want the folks back home to know how Democrats are voting.
Do they actually ever say, we have to be put on the record? Then they don't like. They do say that?
They hate that. They hate that because they're not voting pro-labor. They're not really even voting progressive like a Teddy Roosevelt progressive. They're voting for big, top-heavy, centralized government, more taxes, more fees, more spending, more controls, any attempt to make life a little bit easier for New Hampshire small business community, they're voting the wrong way. every single time. Not every time, but most of them are voting the wrong way every time. And the Democrats, this is why I didn't run as a Democrat. I wanted to represent my district. Also, I don't agree with their big government approach. I wanted to represent my district. But if you run as a Democrat, you have to vote the way leadership tells you. Otherwise, the union officials and lawyers and all those quote-unquote progressive socialists, they will show up and they'll primary you, and if you win your primary, they'll switch over and they'll vote for the Republican to get rid of you. They keep out every single member of the party who doesn't vote straight big government.
So why is it works that way and it doesn't work for Republicans? You know, I've mentioned before the party whip system in Britain, which is not just that there is a whip who's supposed to round up the cats and get them to vote. There is also the strictness of the whip, a 1-line, 2-line, or 3-line whip that says this issue is really, really important to the party. But there's also the condition known as withdrawing the whip from a member, which says you are no longer supported by the party. Clearly the Democrats do that. So if you vote against the Democrats, if you vote against the equivalent of a 3-line whip in the New Hampshire House as a Democrat, you are going to be out of there. You're going to be unsupported by the party next election. The Republicans have no such concept, whether you discuss it in archaic British terms or simply in practical politics. The Democrats insist you vote the party line, or at the very least, you vote right when they tell you. The Republicans don't do that. They don't seem to have any concept of this is important to the party. This is our platform, our principles, and we expect you to come our way.
If you took the average educated, involved, ordinary person who is not part of the two-party system, they're an independent, and you took that independent, educated voter who knows about the issues and knows something about economics and business issues, and you put them in there, they would vote the Republican platform probably 80 to 85% of the time. So what we're asking from the Republican platform isn't anything big or extreme. What we're simply asking, anyone should get a 90% voting record. Anyone should get at least an 85% voting record.
So how is it that you can have Republicans with 40% voting records?
Because Jasper and Flanagan are leaning on them to push the Democrat agenda. And what they have found, after Jasper pulled Lori Sanborn off the Finance Committee for refusing to vote for an 8-cent per gallon gas tax increase, his credibility with the party really fell. Now, all the chairs and vice chairs have been told, and we know they've been told because we all talk. And if they vote against Jasper and Flanagan 3 times, they get pulled. Lori Sanborn only voted against them once, and that was on that gas tax increase. She refused to support the gas tax increase. She was pulled off the committee. She was reassigned to another committee. But seeing so many conservative platform Republicans pulled off their committees, even committee chairs, right at the start of the session and shifted off to less important committees, really put a lot of fear and concern into them. And so we've seen representatives like was it Phil Bright? We've had plenty of conservatives who had 80 and 90% voting records suddenly drop to 60%. We've most of the chairs and vice chairs fall somewhere between 40 and 55%. So they're actually voting with the Democrats. Democrats vote with us 30 or 40% of the time. So to see good conservative, pro-freedom, pro-liberty Republicans having so much pressure put on them, so concerned about their parking spot, that they are driven down to vote Democrat, to vote against the Republican platform and against the Republican primary.
There's a piece right there. They're so afraid of losing their parking spot because they don't want to walk down the street a little way.
Well, they're going to lose their
park
parking
free
spot.
Or die.
They're going to lose
free or die.
They're going to lose their store's parking garage parking spot because we're roll calling these votes, and the people back home are they're reading in the paper now. My paper, the Hampton Union, publishes the roll called votes. So they praised me for voting 99% of the time, which most representatives don't vote 99% of the time. Most don't even vote 90% of the time. I wish they would vote 100% of the time, but especially if they vote with us. But the voters now are seeing the roll call votes, and we're voting on the big issues that people pay attention to: Common Core, Obamacare, the budget, tax increases, fee increases, gun rights, property rights. They're seeing those votes published in the paper, and people are starting to ask, why are some of these Republicans voting with the Democrats all the time?
And
they're voting the wrong way.
Because they're just being short-sighted, which is what a lot of them are. It's about the power and the privilege, and it's not about the people. It's the same problem we see in Washington. They will do anything to maintain their power and privilege, and relatively little to actually serve the voters.
I consider myself to be a pro-labor moderate.
Yeah.
I come from a very union district, and even the non-union folks are very much into labor issues and so forth. My voting record is still over 90%. So if I can get over 90%, anyone should be able to get 90%. There's absolutely no reason, unless you're a raving, hyper-emotional lefty loony, there's no reason to get less than 90% on the HRA platform. And there's no reason to be voting against the gold standard either. Gold standard is the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and that's your personal freedom issues and your constitutional rights. Those are basic constitutional issues. Those are basic, fundamental due process rights. Nobody should be getting a poor score on the gold standard.
Right, and it's like the Republican platform. It's eminently reasonable and pro-liberty, and it's exactly what representatives should be voting for, and the party won't even stand up for it.
And it's nothing controversial like, I don't know, legalizing hookers for Hillary or something like that. It's nothing far out like that. It's all very reasonable stuff that, once you explain the issue to people, 90+% of the people are going to be with you 90% of the time, and yet we have people running as Republicans, and what are they doing? They're voting with the Democrats because Jasper's telling them to. Or you lose your parking spot.
So where is the potential for a vote of no confidence here? It sounds to me...
We don't have time.
Okay, sorry.
Unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
We're going to get... That's a good question, but we have Kevin Bloom in the next segment, and we can come back and talk about that.
Can I mention SB 101?
Quick, you got about 10 seconds.
SB 101 passed. We were really concerned about it. I guess leadership just withdrew their position on it, and so we were able to get it passed. So Common Core is now, unless Maggie Hassan vetoes it, optional for school boards in New Hampshire. You've got local control again.
We'll be right back.
Great.
Stay tuned.